Hey there, do you believe that you can find a bang for the buck? A full battery electric family car with loads of space and on a tight budget? I'm gonna check this Aiways U5 out in this video. A common comment in the comment section below my videos is very often that the EVs, they're extremely expensive, especially if you want an established brand with good range and nice extras and also the ability to tow a caravan. And that's true. EVs are still very expensive. Arguably, you can say that the running expenses when you're owning the car are lower, but yeah, when you have to buy the car, you have to pay quite a lot of money. But if you don't have the need to flash a nice Audi, a Polestar or a Tesla, and you want to go full electric in a family car and maybe have the ability to tow a caravan, in this video I want to check out if an Aiways U5 from China like this is any good. This is an Aiways U5. It's not designed to be a sporty driving experience or to attract attention when passing by. It's more of a modern electric family wagon. An everyday hero. The car always comes with a 63 kWh total and 60 kWh net capacity water-cooled and heated battery from the world's largest battery manufacturer, CATL, who also supplies batteries from many established car manufacturers. It's always front-wheel drive and puts out 150 kilowatts, equivalent to 204 horsepower and 310 Newton meters. It makes the Aiways U5 accelerate from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 7.8 seconds. The car does not come with a heat pump. It uses the cheaper solution, a PTC heater, and it's able to tow 1,500 kilos. And then I need to tell you that here in Europe, if you're considering a second-hand Aiways U5, there's a large possibility that it will only be charging on one phase. That's equivalent to 3.7 kilowatts here in Denmark, actually. But if you buy it as a new car today, it will be charging on 3 phases, and in Denmark that's 11 kilowatts. The car can also DC charge at up to approximately 90 kilowatts, and of course we'll be checking that out later in this video. Unlike other more established car manufacturers, Aiways doesn't have 100 years of history doing cars. No, Aiways was founded back in 2017 in China by a former CEO from Volvo. And already in 2019, Aiways launched their first car, this U5. In 2023, the U6, their second car, will come onto the market, which is basically just a 4-door, more coupe version of the U5. But what kind of car are you buying if you're considering an Aiways U5? Well, the design, you can make up your own mind. But the car here is actually built on a dedicated EV platform, and that's a good thing. Another thing you always get are full LED headlights. It's low beam, high beam, no matrix stuff like that, but it's pretty fair. You also connect your charging cable right here. And of course, I would consider that it could be a problem if you get a big dent on the edge of the car. Otherwise, if we open here, you get a tiny frunk. It's not humongous, but it's enough for your AC charging cable and stuff like that. Another thing that's really nice is that this car is always front-wheel driven. And that means that all the technical stuff, the motor and the inverter, stuff like that, it's beneath here. And that means that you get extra room in the boot. And that's a good thing. Inside the Aiways U5, I was actually, first time I sat down in this seat, I was positively surprised. Well, the car has this little camera. Chinese are watching you. But apart from that, you have a 12.3-inch screen here. That's okay. It's a little laggy, especially if you're running Apple CarPlay. The car doesn't have a navigation, so no helping with preheating the battery for DC charging, stuff like that. And it also doesn't tell you how much state of charge you will arrive with at your destination. But there's a little hack you can download if you're using an iPhone and running Apple CarPlay. You can download the Pump app, it's called, and that will actually work with the car and tell you how much state of charge you will arrive with to your destination. It's pretty clever. Right in front you have 3 screens. The center screen is telling you your speed, your state of charge, stuff like that. You have 2 screens more. The one to the left can tell you your consumption. It can even give you a rev counter. It's pretty funny. And the screen on the right will tell you what you're listening to. But music, it's pretty hard to get in a car like this. Well, you have the Apple CarPlay possibility and a little laggy screen, but the DAB and the FM receiver, it's crap, and it just doesn't work very well. The seats, everything in the cabin is actually better than I had hoped for. So, that's pretty good. Oh yeah, and I forgot, the car doesn't have a start-stop button. That's great, that's the way you need to drive an EV. Well, the rear seats is this car's party trick. I make every car look large. I'm only 1 meter and 76 centimeters. But this seat is set up for me. Try and see this kind of space. It's crazy. The headroom is also, for me, extremely good. But if you're taller, yeah, you'll still be able to be here, but it's okay. This car is built on a dedicated EV platform, so you don't get any drivetrain box here. Then you have the air vent, pretty cool. USB down here, and loads of space in the rear seat. When we're moving to the rear, actually there should be the possibility to open the tailgate with your foot, but I don't know if it's because this attachable hook it's mounted that it doesn't work, but well, I have to open it manually. The tailgate doesn't open that very fast, and it doesn't open that very high. I'm only 1 meter and 76, and I'm pretty close to bumping my head here. Anyways, the boot space here, it's not the largest if you measure in the liters, but it's pretty good actually, and very, very usable. Another thing that you have to bear in mind is that I was talking a little bit about it when I was talking about the front space in the front and all the technical stuff out there. There's a lot of extra room. If you lift the floor here, there's this extra thing actually also in behind, and if you take up this one, there's a humongous space below here, just, you know, to all kinds of stuff. And if you lie down the seats in the car, you get a whole flat space, a floor in the car that you can actually sleep on it if you want. That's pretty great. We are out driving the Aiways U5. This is not a sporty ride. It's it's a bit all over the place. It's very windy today, but I asked my wife also the other day to drive the car where it was not that windy, and she said the same. It's all over the place. It's very unprecise, and you know, it's just you're steering all the time to keep the car go straight. Another thing I would like to talk about is recuperation. EVs tend to be great to drive when you drive that kind of driving that's called one pedal drive. You can just use the accelerator, and when you release the accelerator, the car will decelerate. It converts the motor into a generator, and that creates resistance and the car decelerates. I'm driving 80 kilometers an hour now, and I'll try just to release the accelerator. 3, 2, 1, now. I released the accelerator going 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20. Yeah, and the car doesn't go all the way to a standstill, which is a pity, but yeah, that's just the way it is. I'd like to talk a little about the driving aids in the Aiways U5. driving aids, for many, they're just stuff you switch off. But actually for me, on a long journey, I like driving with it. It makes for a more relaxed drive, and I kind of like it. The Aiways U5 has an adaptive cruise control both in the lower and the higher trim models. So that's pretty cool. And now I set my speed to 90 kilometers an hour. I put the lane keeping assistant active also. And at once you find out that a car like this, it does a lot of blips and blops sounds all the time. It makes chimes if you drive too fast. It makes chimes if the auto steer can't see the lines on the road, which is pretty often. And also in the crossing section, if you're at a standstill behind the car in front and the car in front is too close, this car keeps on beeping, which is pretty stupid. But if you learn to live with that or just cancel it, well, yeah, you're okay. I'm going at 90 kilometers an hour now. I'm driving with the driving aids, and they're actually okay. It can go all the way down to a standstill behind the car and accelerate again when the car in front starts to move. So actually, they're okay. They're a little old school, these driving aids, but they actually work decent. Pretty often, the auto steer function loses track of the white lines on the road, and it disengages the auto steer. But yeah, that's what you get. Now, I'm a Danish YouTuber and I did a complete video with this Aiways U5. In that video, I also measured how the car's noise level in the cabin is at 80 kilometers an hour. Now I'm driving on the section of road where I usually measure the sound, the noise level in the cabin. And let's try and see how the Aiways U5 does. I forgot to mention that it was at 80 kilometers an hour, but 63 dB. It's a little under average. It's not so long time ago I measured the Polestar 2 performance version, which is notoriously known to be noisy inside the cabin, and this one is a little higher. I think that was 62 in the Polestar, 63 here. In my Danish video, I also did a acceleration test of the car, also in this very windy conditions. Now I am at the parking place at the motorway where I usually do my acceleration tests. And I'm also going to do it in this car, but there's a couple of things. First of all, I have a very hard headwind today because it's almost stormy weather, and the wind is just in my face. The second thing is that this car is front-wheel drive only, and it puts out 150 kilowatts, equivalent to 204 horsepower, and 310 Newton meters. And in this week where I've been driving this car, I also found out that the throttle response is not very good. It's like a fossil car. And that means that there's no launch control in a car like this. So you can just floor it, and from you floor it, then the car gradually over a second or something starts putting up momentum. So you actually lose some power just in the first bit of the acceleration. And then there's the next problem. This car is only front-wheel drive, as I said, and if it loses traction, the anti-spin kicks in, and it does it in a little old-fashioned way where you lose a lot of power and then almost lose all your acceleration, and then it starts accelerating again. So I have to be a little gentle on the throttle, and that will make it pretty hard to reach the figures that Aiways promises. That's 0 to 100 kilometers an hour at 7.5 seconds. But let's try. Three, 2, 1, go. Let's U-spin, a little wheel spin. It could definitely be worse. I had a very strong headwind of 11 to 15 meters per second. And I also had wheel spin a couple of times, especially below 80 kilometers an hour, because it's only front wheel drive. And I still went from 0 to 80 kilometers an hour on 5.3 seconds. 0 to 100 on 7.64 seconds. That's actually very close to the 7.5 seconds that Aiways claims. And I went from 30 to 130 kilometers an hour on 11.45 seconds. And these figures are actually very close to what I got out of accelerating Audi Q4 e-tron or Skoda Enyaq, both cars with the 204 horsepower engine and rear-wheel drive. Now I'm back where I started. And let's start to look at the consumption, because, that's been pretty harsh. The consumption on this trip is also maybe a bit higher than it normally would be, because it's really a windy day. 11 to 15 meters per second the wind's blowing, and that's been pretty hard on the consumption. If I crush the numbers, the board computer tells me that the consumption on average has been on this trip around 30 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. And my trip has been 56 kilometers, 28 kilometers out and 28 kilometers home. And that will be 28 kilometers in headwind and 28 kilometers with the wind behind me. And I think that confused the board computer a bit. I also looked how much state of charge I've lost, and I've lost approximately 40% state of charge on 56 kilometers. So if I crush those numbers, it equals that on 100% state of charge at 130 kilometers an hour and in very windy conditions and at 6-7 degrees Celsius, my range is not more than 140 kilometers. Of course, in my Danish video, I also did a DC charging test with this car, and how that ended up, you can watch right here. It's time to do this little charging test, and normally I would do it just right away after I've been driving on the motorway. I did those recordings yesterday, but it became pretty late, and I had to go home and get the kids and stuff like that, so I chose to do it today. Now the battery's pretty cold. I've been driving the car a bit, and I'm down to 6-7% state of charge, but I'm not sure that the battery has the optimal temperature. It's pretty cold today, approximately 5 degrees Celsius. So let's see how it turns out. As expected, the battery was not at the optimal temperature, and 10 to 80% took almost 47 minutes. Aiways claims that the car can charge from 20 to 80% in 35 minutes. Well, now I've gone to one of those brick roads in the town where I live. It's Varde in Denmark. And there's a lot of these very beautiful roads, and I want to check out if there's any rattling sounds in the car when I drive down these brick roads. So let's try. There was a little rattling noise from the rear, but I believe it's some of my camera gear in the box behind, so I wouldn't put that on the car. So actually it passed that test with perfection. Well, try and listen to the sound when you close the door. It's almost premium ish. This was my 1 week where I borrowed this Aiways U5. A car that in many ways, well, surprised me in a very positive way. The materials in the cabin and the level of extras, all these things are actually very nice and to a very affordable price. However, the car ain't perfect. It has an, well, in the best case, an average safety rating of 3 stars at Euro NCAP. The design is what it is, and it's not coming with a heat pump, which gives the car, especially in this cold climate as we have in Denmark, in the part of Scandinavia, it has a pretty high consumption. I measured the consumption both over the week that I've been driving this car in normal daily driving conditions, and I actually ended up having a consumption figure that was more like 25, maybe even 26 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. And that's pretty high, but that's also because we have a lot of short journeys, short commuting, where the car uses a lot of energy to heat up the cabin, and then you finish driving, and then you put the car away and it gets cold. And when I drove it on the freeway, I did everything to have a really, really bad consumption. I drove in a almost stormy weather. It was really, really windy that day I was driving, and I was going at 130 kilometers an hour, and there I had a consumption that was almost hitting maybe 40 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. And when this car only comes with a 60 kilowatt hour battery, that gives you a really rubbish range. But of course, I would advise that if you think about a car like this, also think about how will you use this car. Are you going to have a lot of long journeys? Don't buy a car like this. It also doesn't charge that very quickly. Finally, I'd say I'd lease a car like this instead of buying it. Aiways is a fairly new brand, as is many of the other Chinese EV manufacturers that has been appearing the last few years. And I'm not sure, and that's just what I think, that I'm not sure that's right, but I myself am not sure that we're gonna see all these car brands still be around in 5 or 10 years. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. And for me, there's just a bigger safety in leasing the car instead of buying it. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please leave a like and a nice comment. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you would like to do that. Thanks for now. See you next Wednesday. Bye.